Okay, I'm going to go over Plato's theory of metaphysical epistemology, sometimes known as the divided line theory. I think your book calls it that. Basically, I want you to look at this from the bottom up. And this is kind of the introduction to chapter 4. We'll talk about Plato a little bit, and then we're going to move into Descartes and then the British empiricists. But to really understand this, you kind of got to understand it in a line of thinking. And the line of thinking kind of starts with Plato. I want you to look at this, like I said, from the bottom up. So, looking at the bottom, imagination, and we're going to do the analogy of the allegory of the cave here, and I'll have a video for you to look at and an activity that we're going to do. But basically, Plato believes that most of mankind is facing the wall of a cave, and we really don't see reality as it is. That we're kind of blinded by the light, so to speak. And, you know, our imagination is basically just images and fantasies of the real world, but it's not really the real world. So, and he believes that that's kind of Plato was an elitist, if you knew that from reading some of his governmental works. He believes that only the elite should rule, only the educated, smart, not wealthy, but educated, I guess smart class should be in charge, and that the masses, if you leave them, you know, the opportunity to govern, they'll govern wrong. So he was kind of a question mark, because he lived in a democracy and he was in favor of a democracy for the most part, and he used everything in Athenian democracy to his advantage, but yet he himself had the belief that the masses can't really rule, which is part of our government right now. If you look at the argument between who should rule, you know, that can the masses actually make reasonable decisions, which is an argument that's been going on for several thousand years. Anyway, so looking at the bottom, you got imagination, images, fantasies, and then the next thing is perception. And perception, kind of going up here, anything in the physical world is a perception. So, and the thing is, like, and I've had you do this before, if you imagine a point someplace in the air and connect the dots between the 2 points, you'll find you'll have a perfect line. And you couldn't draw a perfect line. I can try to draw a pretty perfect line. That's not bad. But it's not perfect. It's flawed. And even the, you know, most expensive diamond on the earth has flaws. So Plato's argument is anything physical is flawed and has the ability and will eventually decay. And so anything like in this room, there's, I don't know, a chair, there's the deck, there's no more snow out there, that's good, there's a plant. So if you come back in, you know, 100 years, it's not going to look the same. It's going to look a little different. If you come back in 1,000 years, it'll look quite a bit different. And 10,000 years, it'll all be decayed. In fact, I think the half-life of U-238 is at 4.6 billion years or something, that no matter what in the physical world, it will decay. So, and that's the philosophy or the thought that everything physical eventually degrades or degenerates. There's a name for that in physics, but that everything is kind of coming towards destruction. It's pretty sad. But anyway, that's Plato's belief in the physical world, but his way out of this is the divided line, and the line, there's the divided line between the physical world and what he felt was the world of pure thought and pure goodness. And so if you go from the bottom part, images and fantasies, to perception, and perception had a place, but he believed that it couldn't really be considered reality. The true reality is above the divided line. So anything, you know, and this is where his theory of metaphysical epistemology, that we live in a physical world, but yet we are spiritual beings, according to Plato. And any belief, have you ever hear the word Neoplatonic or a Neoplatonist? So sometimes, you know, you have people that will argue that different cultures in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century borrowed from Plato, and this was a very prominent belief that we have these 3 different types of levels: the the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And the mental, if you go down there and you look at reality and then truth and then finally clarity, Plato's argument, it wasn't necessarily spiritual in terms of theistic spiritualism, although he was a theist, but it was spiritualism in terms of that you move from the physical to the mental, and that to the mental, Plato put that in mostly a spiritual dimension. In deductive reasoning, math, if you think about math is an interesting kind of he called it a bridge. It's kind of a bridge between the physical and the spiritual. Because if you take 2 plus 2, Descartes talked about this, he was bothered by this. A lot of philosophers have been bothered by this. Why does it equal 4? Why doesn't 2 plus 2 equal 7 or 6? And why does, if a triangle, why do the three sides of a triangle always equal 180 degrees? And why can you always apply 3.14 to a circle and figure out its radius? Well, it's because those are absolute, undisputable truths, and that's where you get into where the empiricists look at that again later. But with deductive reasoning and math, Plato saw that as kind of the bridge between physical and what he called pure thought. And pure thought, he believed, was where you get into the realms of truth and clarity. So, and that moved mostly to his idea of forms and his idea of teleology, which you know is forms. Looks like I've got another student helping me today. Dodge. Okay, so anyway, we move from the physical world to the spiritual world through math into the realm of forms, where he would say that like a chair has chairness, or a dog, where you at, boy? Has dogness. He's a dog. He's not a table. And you can't make him what he's not, because it has this form of being that was there before it really started. So that's how he argues that you can't really dispute that the dog's a chair and the chair's a dog. But and yeah, maybe we named them, but they still had that form of what they were, that teleology of what they were. So he would argue that that's the divided line that separates the physical world of images and fantasies, and then perception, into the spiritual world, which is truth, clarity, and true goodness, is what he believed. And he believed that math was kind of the gateway through that, if that makes any sense. And his allegory of the cave is that we're all kind of like people. We all start out chained to the wall of a cave, and we see images and fantasies and just pictures. We just get glimpses of what reality might be. In order to find reality, we have to deliberately move from the physical world into the spiritual world. Plato believed that it was a deliberate movement to move up this chain into the place where you reached pure thought and pure goodness. I'm not saying this is true, but I'm saying that if you read the New Testament, and you can see a lot of Neoplatonism, or either, maybe they were just both right, or whatever, or maybe they were both wrong. I'm not suggesting either. I'm just saying that when you look at, say, where it says, we look through a glass darkly, and we don't really see reality as it really is, and that later on in the spiritual world you'll see reality as it really is. There's a lot of the 13 Pauline epistles that have a lot of Neoplatonism in them, and this whole idea of the three dimensions, physical, mental, and spiritual, is what you need to remember. And you need to remember that the physical decays and the spiritual doesn't decay, and the mental doesn't decay. For example, like 2 plus 2 equals 4, you don't think that like if I come back in 5,000 years it might only equal 3 because it's starting to decay. 2 plus 2 will always equal 4. So the thing is, it is, and it doesn't change. So there's a lack of changeability on everything above the divided line, and everything below the divided line is in constant change and constant regression. So anyway, that's Plato's theory of metaphysical epistemology.